Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to talk about pills and pilling in fabric and our yarns, our knitted garments, our woven garments. It shows up in everything. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how pills work, why they show up, how to combat them in the work that we do. They are a fact of life. They're probably going to happen in most instances because that's just what happens with really natural fibers and some non-natural fibers. It just shows up. So what a pill is it's the shorter staple that's working its way out. And it works its way out of the yarn, the sweater, whatever, but it's started in the yarn and it's working its way out. It just does. Through friction, through movement, through the life of the yarn and the fiber, it works its way out. And so what happens when you have a pill and it's working its way out, and say you go to pull it off. So let's say this is my yarn. This whole box of yarn is the one yarn altogether. And all of these little bits in here represent a different strand of fiber that's making up this one whole yarn, okay? And this is attached to a pill, and there's a little pill attached to this. And what I'm gonna do is yank on it. Can you see the other ones moving? Let's see. And it pulls other ones out with it. So if I have a sweater that has pills on it, and I start yanking at those pills, all I'm doing, I'm yanking that pill off and maybe satisfying my need to not have that pill on that sweater, but it's going to pull fibers because you're pulling it, so it's attached to the sweater. There's little tiny fibers that's still attached to, and what it's doing, like I showed with that box of yarn, it's pulling the other fibers out with it. You're making more pills. So if you were to cut that pill off, so you're going to cut it off, and there's still more on that surface that's probably going to pill and need to be cut off. But what it does is it preserves what's left in that yarn and doesn't make new pills pulling off of it. Might seem like it makes new pills by cutting them off just because there's going to be that little bit left, but you're not really making more. You're just going to let that pill finish out. What's come loose out of that fiber needs to finish to come loose, and eventually it won't pill anymore because what has come loose and it's done. I'll tell people that a sweater only has so much pilling in it. In its life, it only has so much pilling. There's only so much short fiber that's going to pull out and come out of that yarn, and then it'll be done because the rest will be solid and in there unless you keep pulling them out. If you keep pulling them out, you're going to keep pulling more fibers and creating more pills and more problems for yourself. So that's that. Stop pulling on your pills. Let's not do that. How are we going to combat this? How are we going to stop this from happening? So if you are a hand spinner, you have access to breeds and you know more about staple length. And staple length is the length of the fibers that are in a garment. It's the fleece that comes off of a sheep, the length of the fleece that comes off the sheep. So if it's following a breed standard, then a BFL is longer than a merino. So a longer staple fiber, if you can think about it, has that longer staple, so there's going to be less pills. So in a section like this, you've probably got 2 pieces of BFL and maybe the little ends are sticking up. But in this same amount of section, you probably got 3 or 4 sections of merino and more sections of it that can pop up. And it's a shorter staple. So there's that. If you are a knitter and you can look for it, you know, try to find a breed, find out what the breed is made out of, find out if it's a longer or shorter staple. The other thing is comb top versus a woolen top. So comb top, everything is aligned, everything is straight. A lot of people are calling it roving still, even though it's combed top. Look for it. Roving is all jumbled up fibers, and the fibers are all different lengths. There is no uniform length in a roving. There might be, just by happenstance, but that's not how it's made up. Roving is just all of the fibers, all of the lengths. It can be short and long, and they're all jumbled up in all directions, and those tend to pill more. So you want a comb top. And you want to have more twist in your yarn. So sometimes, like for this sweater, I made a pretty low twist yarn because I wanted it to drape. And it's got a really beautiful drape to it. And some of that drape comes from the lace knitting, and some of it comes from that I made a yarn that was nice and drapey. This yarn I made, and it's really stiff, but I didn't need it to drape well. It's a lot stiffer, and that's great. I have pockets, I have structure in this one, and so this one has more twist. If they were, you know, exact comparisons, if they were both merino based fiber and the only difference was the twist, then this one would stand up a little bit better because it's twisted a little bit more. The other thing is number of plies. The more plies you have, the more friends you have holding your yarn together. So if you think about that, and you've only got 2, so there's only 2 of you holding each other together, you're not holding each other up as well as if there's 3 or 4 of you that are holding yourselves together and able to keep yourselves more sturdy. You know, yarn likes friends too. So, like if we talk about commercial yarn, do we recognize this Noro Crayon? So if we look at Noro Crayon, it's a single. It doesn't have a lot of twist to it. It pulls apart really easily. I can see that it's made out of roving because everything is jumbled up and all over the place. And if I pull it apart, these are really, really, can you see them? Really, really short fibers. So this one goes against everything that I just told you. It has short fibers. It is based on a woolen fiber. It isn't twisted a whole lot, and there's no plying to it. It's just a singles yarn, period. It's just one single. So this one goes against everything, and you know these are gonna pill quite a bit. And I have a sweater made from this, a couple of them, because I love it. It's fun to knit with. And I'm not saying that this isn't a good yarn to knit with. It is. It is a fun yarn to knit with. But if you hate pills, this one is not gonna be your friend. So think about your yarn and how much. I mean, do you want the color? Do you want the fun of knitting it? Or do you want no pills? Sometimes we have to make these choices as knitters and spinners. Sometimes we're gonna work with things that are gonna pill just because we want to work with them. Just expect that they're gonna pill, and it might be a little bit easier on you when they do. So when you're knitting, there are ways to combat the pilling a little bit. So you can knit at a tighter gauge, which means less drape, but you can knit at a tighter gauge, and you could felt something. So a lot of this kind of stuff was used in felted bags and felted projects because it did pill a lot. It wasn't a really sturdy yarn, but felted, you know, you got to keep all of the gorgeous colors, you got to knit with the fun thing, and you felted it and it lasted longer. But that's a choice. Do you want something that's drapey and lovely, or do you want it felted and knit really tightly? And that's fine, either one. So it just depends on what you want to get out of your yarn. So, pills. I'm gonna link down below. I've written a bunch of articles and blog posts, but I'm just gonna link the one blog post that I have. There's lots of stuff about pilling out there, a lot of stuff about how to take care of clothing. So just know that pills are a fact of what we do. It's just a fact of fiber. It's just what fiber does. You know, commercial clothing, some of it nowadays just pills like crazy. I know this material that I made this out of, I did buy the material and then made the top, but this particular material is a brushed knit material. It tends to pill like crazy. I think it's just because it's soft and it's got shorter fibers in it and it's already been brushed, so it's a really nice fabric, and I won't stop using it because I like it, and it usually comes in really fun prints. but under my armpits and along the sides, I know we're gonna get pills. So it's just one of those facts of things to deal with. And if they bother me, I'll go through and I'll very gently, very carefully cut them off. If you're worried about cutting into something, you can get a pair of duck-billed scissors, and I'll post a link to that down below as well so that you can see. And the duck-billed scissors they're kind of they had a big flat part. I lost mine. I probably ought to buy a new pair. I think they walked off. You know how that happens. But it might seem like it hides it, but it does kind of help glide along the top of it so that you're not kind of digging in. If you use pointy scissors, they kind of dig in a little bit. You want to make sure that you're not digging into the knitwear. You just kind of want to glide along the top and snip, snip, snip. And that'll take care of your pills for you. So that's it. Make excellent yarn. Make good yarn choices. And we'll talk again about yarn structures and having better yarns for your projects, or at least having the yarns that you want, because sometimes having a yarn that isn't a better yarn is exactly what you want, and it's okay. Have fun making.